Hi, my name is Elise Broach, and I'm going to talk to you today about my middle grade mystery masterpiece. It's a story about art, forgery, and friendship, and the two central characters are James, who is an 11-year-old boy living in New York City, a lonely boy who doesn't have many friends, and a beetle, Marvin, who lives in James's apartment in New York City with his family under the kitchen sink. These two get involved in an art mystery at the Metropolitan Museum of Art where a famous Dürer drawing has been stolen, and James and Marvin become involved in trying to recover it. So the idea for this story actually started 20 years ago when I was in history graduate school and my contact lens slipped down the bathroom sink of my apartment. It was late at night. I was getting ready to go to bed, and the contact lens disappeared, and I spent the next hour on the floor of my bathroom trying to take the pipes out from under the sink so that I could get the contact back, and I kept thinking how wonderful it would be to have a little tiny creature who could go down the drain and get my contact back for me. So I actually wrote the first 3 chapters of the story that night 20 years ago, and I didn't come back to it until recently, but I feel like it's such a better story for the time that elapsed in between. The scene that I'm going to read you is a really important scene in the story. It's right after James's disastrous birthday party. James was given a bottle of ink and a fountain pen from his father that he sort of doesn't know what to do with because he's not an artistic boy. And he's left that on his bedroom desk. And Marvin, late at night, is traveling to James's room to give him a buffalo nickel as a little present. He wants to leave it for James because James had such a bad birthday party. He wants to cheer him up. So that is the section I'm going to read to you right now because that sort of starts the whole mystery in motion. The journey to the dark apartment to James's room was an arduous one. Rolling the nickel across the kitchen tile went relatively smoothly, but hoisting it over the door sills left Marvin exhausted and panting. He had to watch for trouble every step of the way, not just night-roving pompadours, but the booby traps of forgotten gum or scotch tape on the floor, or worse yet, a foraging mouse. When he finally reached James's bedroom, he had to sit for a minute to catch his breath. A street lamp outside the window cast dim light across the walls, and in the bluish blackness, Marvin saw the mountainous silhouette of James asleep under the blankets. He heard the boy's deep breaths. Marvin thought about the birthday party. Had it been a good day for James? The boys at the party weren't his friends. The presents had been an uninspired mix of electronic games and designer clothing. Mrs. Pompadour was as fussy and self-centered as always, and even James's father, whom Marvin liked a lot, hadn't come up with a present that seemed to please his son. Marvin glanced down at the worn base of the buffalo nickel. Would the coin make up for everything else? Probably not. Suddenly, Marvin felt so sad he could hardly stand it. A person's birthday should be a special day, a wonderful day, a day of pure celebration for the luck of being born. And James's birthday had been miserable. Marvin rolled the nickel to a prominent place in the middle of the floor, away from the edge of the rug where it might be overlooked. James would see it here. He looked around the dark room one last time. Then he saw the bottle of ink. It was high up on James's desk, and it appeared to be open. Curious, Marvin crawled across the floor to the desk and quickly climbed to the top. James had spread newspaper over the desk and 2 or 3 sheets of the art paper his father had given him. On one page, he'd made some experimental scribbles and had written his name. The pen, neatly capped, rested at the edge of the paper, but the bottle of ink stood open, glinting in the weak light. Without really thinking about what he was doing, Marvin crawled to the bottle cap and dipped his 2 front legs in the ink that had pooled inside. On his clean hind legs, he backed over to an unused sheet of paper. He looked out the window at the nightscape of the street, the brownstone opposite with its rows of darkened windows, the snow-dusted rooftop, the street lamp, the naked, spidery branches of a single tree. Gently, delicately, and with immense concentration, Marvin lowered his front legs and began to draw. The ink flowed smoothly off his legs across the page. Though he'd never done anything like this before, it seemed completely natural, even unstoppable. He kept glancing up, tracing the details of the scene with his eyes, then transferring them onto the paper. It was as if his legs had been waiting all their lives for this ink, this page, this lamplit window view. There was no way to describe the feeling. It thrilled Marvin to his very core. He drew and drew, losing all sense of time. He moved back and forth between the bottle cap and the paper, dipping his front legs gently in the puddle of black ink, always careful not to smear his previous work. He watched the picture take shape before his eyes. It was a complicated thatching of lines and whorls that looked like an abstract design up close as Marvin leaned over it. But as he backed away, it transformed into a meticulous portrait of the cityscape, a tiny, detailed replica of the winter scene outside the window. and then the light changed. The sky turned from black to dark blue to gray. The street lamp shut off, and James's room was filled with the noise of the city waking. A garbage truck groaned and banged as it passed on the street below. James stirred beneath his bed covers. Marvin, desperate to finish the picture before the boy awakened, hurried between the page and the bottle cap, which was almost out of ink. At last he stopped, surveying his miniature scene. It was finished. It was perfect. It was breathtaking.